Hello, everyone. I'm ZHAO Chuang. Today, let's draw the hindlimbs of Parasaurolophus. Parasaurolophus was a duck-billed dinosaur. A feature of hadrosaurs was their very broad soles. It had only 3 toes. Iguanodon also had 3 toes. But hadrosaurs, as a dinosaur that came after it, was more advanced. Its toes were very different from those of Iguanodon, which were much shorter. If you look at the soles, you will find that it's shaped like a plum blossom. There are plenty of fossilized hadrosaur tracks to prove that most hadrosaurs had such soles. It had 3 toes facing forward with very large pads, and 1 pad at the back, so the 4 pads generally formed a club shape. Now let's draw the hind limbs of Parasaurolophus. The hind limbs of Parasaurolophus were typical of hadrosaurs. Let's start with the ankle. This was its ankle joint. Since it bended forward, let's draw some folds in front of the joint. Moving down to its metatarsus, which was equivalent to the sole of a human foot. The sole consisted of 3 bones, because one was buried under the skin, so it was mainly supported by 3 bones. The 3 bones were not of the same length. The middle one was longer and the 2 on the sides were shorter, so its 3 toes were not on the same plane. It had short toes. Hadrosaur's toes were quite different from those of its ancestors, the Iguanodon. They were much shorter. Its phalanges were so vestigial that they became very short and broad. It had 3 toes with very large hoof-shaped toenails at the ends that were ground flat at the bottom. On the sides of the toenail were 2 inwardly concave structures called blood grooves. It had 2 main functions: to keep the keratins on the surface in the place, and also the blood vessels in them could supply blood to the toenails. It had very wide pads under its toes. If it stepped on the ground, we could see that the flesh of its 2 toes was pressed. And squeezed against each other to form some folds here. Hadrosaurs probably didn't have the large scales on its insteps like theropods or birds did. It may have a simple distribution of small scales, so the surface should appear smooth. When we draw a duck-billed dinosaur, we don't need to draw it like a bird or a theropod with large scales. The intact skin fossil impressions of this part of hadrosaurs all show that there were only simple scales here. Then draw some folds here as construction lines to suggest its volume. Good, like this, we've finished drawing the hindlimb of Parasaurolophus.